Yeah.
Erin says, I feel
Didn't
like
mean
we've
to.
stumbled into the soapbox episode and I am here for it. I'm like, yes, we apparently are here for it too. But isn't that every episode? Hello and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We are here to help train your eyes so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. If you're wondering who are we to be analyzing these pros, Cassie and I both have extensive training and experience in both partner and solo dancing. Cassie has about 23 years and I have about 25. So today we are talking about keeping it simple. And we have talked about this before, actually. The last time we talked about it, we did a video of Jessica Cox and John Lindo McCurdy, but it was when she was Jessica Cox.
It's very confusing.
And that was a really popular video. So we wanted to take another look at it. Not that video, but just keeping it simple. And we are looking today at a video of Tren Veal and Markus Smith from Wild Wild Westy. And I think that is the preamble.
Yeah. Link is in the chat. Go ahead and give it a look. And when you're done, we will get to you analyzing. All right. To the screen share.
I think I want to start out just by mentioning how many triples you see in both of these.
Yes.
Honestly, it for like a Champions Jack and Jill especially, but I would go as far as saying All-Star Champ, Strictly or Jack and Jill's. Like, it's not super frequent to see a lot of triples. And granted, these guys kind of have their basics stylized. And I think it tends to be depending on like the song choices. But for these two songs, they kind of are really stylized in a way that is a little bit it emphasizes certain parts of the music. And I love how much they're really keeping it simple, but then they do have some really fun moments as well. And we'll talk about those. But honestly, I just wanted to point out like how many triples that you see. Because
I know. And
not a thing.
As a side note, because I also am starting to see that at like the intermediate advanced level where it's like advanced footwork, quote unquote, right? That's the joke where you're not tripling, you're just kind of standing there. Which is fine if that's something you're doing on purpose as a styling. But I'm seeing so many dancers coming up through the ranks, and I am such a curmudgeon. I will count on my fingers. It's like a 10-finger challenge. But for this, it ends up being a 5-finger challenge. I'm like, okay, there's one triple. There's two. And sometimes I get through a whole song. I've watched someone dance an entire song and they've done 4 or 5 triples the entire time. Yeah. And it breaks my heart. Anyways.
Triples are fine. Triples are
a fundamental part of the dance that we dance.
And I also want to add that I think that a lot of the feedback people are getting is about, adding more of their own style to things. And like, you can do that without taking out the triples.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Markus and Tren do a really good job of that.
Like right at the beginning, we see Tren do this inside turn, and she basically does a spiral with her legs. So she's just doing a normal inside turn, but she's adjusting the footwork a little bit to stylize it.
Yeah.
It's simple as beautiful when it's done well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the reasons why we enjoy this topic so much is we want to get as many other people on board with us that like simple done well, like the done well part is what is getting, I feel like that's what's getting lost. Yeah. There's no joy in the technical, like, how do I do this, quote unquote, right, based on what I'm trying to do and the way I'm trying to do it. Because technique just means the way in which you do something. And there are multiple techniques based on what you're trying to accomplish. But there is kind of like a base foundation of techniques that are West Coast swing viable. And that's why you can see what can feel like such really different styles on different high-level dancers. But ultimately, they're all kind of working from the same foundation. That's why you'll hear teacher A say XYZ, teacher B, C, H, I, J. I don't know. I'm just alphabet at this point. Sorry. Um, but really they're talking about the same thing more often than
Yeah.
not, just from different perspectives.
Yeah. And I also wanted to point out, so after she does this kind of spiral, and then they're just doing just like a basic sugar, she does like a head drop back, which adds a little bit extra to what she's doing as she's coming forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I like seeing a kind of head drop because it shows that you're kind of relaxed. And it also, in my opinion, a lot of times having a kind of head drop as the rest of your body's moving forward kind of shows me that you are actually following.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a cause and effect kind of thing, where if you're doing it at the right time and you're releasing at the right moment, it's a result of the rest of your body doing your technique.
Yep.
And then we were to shift our focus to Markus. He's just keeping it really simple. And the main thing that he does through this section is with his free arm. Just has a really simple kind of pulse swing to it, kind of reminiscent of Lindy Hop, just dialed down a ways. And then I love the choice as he goes into this sugar push, he gets much more staccato and clear with his foot strikes and weight transfers. So he's really emphasizing the beat of the music, whereas he wasn't before. So if I hold forward, much more subtle footwork, and then much more almost aggressive footwork for the next pattern. And that he's just dancing his basics ever so slightly differently. And then because they're on a spotlight giant floor, I would be intimidated as doing a spotlight in Wild Wild Westy. So it reminds me of the Swing Diego days. Like, that's a large floor for two people to fill up. But he travels the push break and takes it into a rock and go to turn just a normal sugar push into something that takes up the floor and is more dynamic instead of just being in place.
Yeah, but we're still not adding like a ton of just like random things to it.
Right.
We're traveling, a very simple sugar and moving it down the floor.
And the way you can tell that they're actually like staying in compression for this middle part. So he brings her in. He waits for her to catch up to him, like right here. This really important part, he extends his right arm out ahead of him, so that way Tren can connect to it with a bent arm while still being upright, and then invites her into compression, and then keeps her in that compression while encouraging her to travel forward.
Yeah.
And then using that connection to then immediately go into a rock and go. There was no loss of connection in that right hand. It was consistent. The type of connection was changing, but there was connection the whole time. There was no neutral.
Yeah. As a follow, like, it's so important when you get put into a compression like connection, you stay there. And I understand to an extent, like sometimes personally, if I'm dancing with somebody that I know doesn't do a great job of communicating coming out of that compression, then sometimes I will move myself out of it if I feel like that they're not intending to leave me there. But generally, like when you go into a compression, you want to stay there until you're let out of it. So
yeah, that is so hard to do, because I know so many follows have that same problem where it's like, well, more often than not, I have to leave myself out. And the main thing there is just to remember that that's something you built into your muscle memory. So that way you can undo it in those moments where like, oh, this leader, I can trust with that. But it's easier said than done, because muscle memory is a demon to fight when it's doing things you don't want it to do.
That's true. But I also want to say that like you don't have to, because typically on the compression part, you're taking 1, 2, 3, and the steps are like underneath you, and then back. And you don't have to step like take a huge step back. You don't have to, especially if you're uncertain of if you're going to be led out of compression or not. You can step just like a little bit more to the side, or, you know, just right back under yourself, and then move as you see fit. But yeah, you don't have to take a large step if you're unsure. And that sometimes, in my opinion, kind of helps a lead figure out that like they need to do a little something differently if you're not going very far.
All right. I want to highlight the transition into the rock and go real quick. So we're basically going to be following the hand through space. And I want you to notice that with each frame progression, it is either continuing down the floor to the left, screen left, or it's just kind of slowing down. Like right here, it's becoming a center counterpoint. And even though it's a rock and go, even though Tren is settling with her left foot back, the handhold is not actually traveling towards her at all.
Yeah.
The handhold is continuing screen left until it becomes a very stable center counterpoint instead of one that is also traveling while being a center counterpoint. And then it accelerates towards Markus again to bring her out of that. But it's at no point is it traveling that way towards Tren. And that's a really important detail. It can look like that if you're just watching Markus. This moment where his arm goes from here to here. If all we're thinking about is the arm independent of the body, you're going to be like, yeah, the hand's going towards Tren. It's not. His body is moving away from his hand.
Yeah. And it like, I think the camera makes the illusion a little bit harder to see through, you know?
Right.
And if he does happen to be moving it towards her, it's like the smallest amount because he's trying to set up that counter, center counterpoint.
Yep. It's more that it transitions to a kind of compression in the handhold that's like a stop. So instead of like, get away from me, it's like, you can stop here now.
You stay there, I'll move.
You still, I'll let you know when I'm ready for you.
So this is kind of one of the moments that they do take to do something kind of more fun. And they're clearly on the same page, which is very important. Especially because when Tren goes into this sit dip, she is extending her legs out from her. And that adds a lot of extra weight into Markus, really. And so he has to be really stable for her to go into that. So they really need to be on the same page. Otherwise, we've seen before, it doesn't end up super well.
Yep. And I want to highlight yes, his hand is getting across her back and into her armpit, but because her arm is underneath his, so she can really wrap her arm around his ribs for even extra stability. And I think the detail that I want to highlight is that the point of connection across her back basically goes down. Wow, I don't know what's wrong with my pen today. It goes down and then it comes up. It's not doing this weird, like, let's go over here. Let's go over here. Let's go over here. And it's like George of the Jungle. It's just like so much going on. Because like, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
It's that kind of like, well, that was a weight supported move that could have ended in severe injuries, and we're rewarding it. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Just my 2 cents. I would much rather be super excited by something clean and simple done well than something risky that they
Yeah.
happened to survive.
Yeah. I would agree with that. On that note, it reminds me of a long time ago, I was talking with somebody that at that point was like an all-star, and we were watching, I think it was Benji and Tot, and those dances can get chaotic. And we were talking about it, and I was like, yeah, they're like barely getting through everything they're doing. Like they were getting through it fine, but it was like it was touch and go in like every second of the dance. And this person I was talking to was like, wasn't that what makes them champions though? That they can survive that? I was like, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, we should do like a whole episode on that, because yes, it requires skill to get out of that without being injured.
Mm-hmm.
But if the bar is to not be injured, that bar is too low.
Yeah.
So I think
Yep.
that's the point we're trying to make. We want it also to look clean, be musical, and be clear that it's clear between the two partners and also clear to the audience what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And what tends to happen is this ambiguity tornado between the two partners. I like that term, ambiguity tornado. And like we usually see competent individuals who are athletic and skilled enough in their connection for self-preservation. It's very rare that we see something like that actually end in injury or someone getting dropped.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I say, if the bar is just, hey, that was chaos and nobody got hurt, the bar's too low.
Yeah. Agreed.
Sorry.
Anyways, moving on. I just wanted to say that because what you were saying reminded me of that story. I was like, I should mention that.
Yes, it's a good one. So once again, for this last section, we've been seeing Markus really take advantage of the whole floor. So instead of thinking of him having like one slot, I think the way I'm thinking of what he's doing is he has 3 slots end to end, and he's shifting from one to the other and back and forth.
Mm-hmm. And I like what we're seeing from Tren as well, because she is like totally following what he's leading her through, but she's adding a lot of extra like stylized steps. So she's playing around with where she's kind of placing the weight on her feet, and how much she is bending into her knees, all that kind of thing. But she's still like completely following what he is giving her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's staying in a connected position where she is mostly pitched enough backwards to have some connection with him. Because sometimes what we see with this is that like they do the same thing that she's doing with her like legs and feet style wise, but then because they want to do that and be totally independent, they're not using the connection, they're not giving their partner any weight or any idea of what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can see, especially right here, it was a great example. So can you go to the very start, like the first step when she comes around? So she's just relaxing the arm here, following through. Initially, she steps a little bit back behind her and then underneath her, but then you see that right foot as she's kind of digging in and styling it a little bit. She's placing it in front of her and then letting her upper body sit back so that she's getting into that pitched position.
She's really just letting the connection dictate
Mm-hmm.
chain of events going through her body.
Yeah.
And that's the part that, like, imagine if someone set up an amazing domino run. We've all seen them, right? and someone knocks over the first domino, but and then as it's going a few miles ahead of where the dominoes are actually falling, a couple of dominoes just went, let's go, and they fell over of their own volition. That's what it can look like when a leader or a follower does movement that should be dictated by the connection, and they're doing it independently.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a distinction, like competitively, you want to look like you're connected, and if you are with someone who cannot provide that for you, there is that element of you need to make it look like that's what's going on. That's what part of being a good dancer is. But there's a difference between that and just arbitrarily willy-nilly going like, I'll do it here, I'll do it here. And then there's this whole the chain of cause and effect is broken at the shoulder usually.
Mm-hmm.
And it tends to go from the shoulder out to the hand and from the shoulder through the body, as opposed to from the hand to the shoulder and then to the body.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the kind of things that happen so fast that if you haven't trained your eye to notice them, it can be really hard.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's like when I studied 3D character animation, and then I wanted to see the animated Spider-Man film that came out a few years back, right? Amazing movie, but large parts of it were animated on twos as a little an artistic choice, right? But I could see it because I'd trained my eye to be able to notice differences in just one frame in 24 frames per second. And when 2 frames are the same, that's what's happening on twos. So you actually only have like 12 drawings instead of 24 drawings over 1 second.
Yeah.
I could notice that. And so I actually got a headache watching that movie. It was so sad. And then, don't get me started when they were very sneaky about the main Spider-Man being on opposite twos from a secondary Spider-Man, like the mentor one.
What?
Yeah. So they would be offset a little bit. So
Weird.
On the frames where the main Spider-Man was freezing would be the frame where the other Spider-Man was moving. It'd be alternating free. Oh man, if you're like me and you have the eye where you can see that, like I understand brilliantly, but my autistic brain can't. It ends in a headache. But anyways, back to West Coast Swing. That's what I'm talking about. It's the chain of cause and effect in time that gets broken when it's arbitrary.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something else that I want to point out about this. So a lot of times I talk about how follows tend to overstep themselves and then not fix it. So then they're just like falling into their ones or into their next steps. And I wanted to point this out because Tren actually does overstep herself a little bit here, but she fixes it. And a lot of times that's not the reaction that we see from follows. And so you can kind of tell that she's overstepping herself a little bit because when she comes into that kind of first step out of that rotation, she steps and plants quite a ways behind her. And she's really angled in towards Markus. And then she kind of fixes that because she doesn't actually get like totally up over that. And that second step is still a little bit overstepping herself. But because of what she's doing with that right foot, she's intentionally now placing it quite a ways in front of her and starting to placement or put the shoulders in a place where she can move back as she brings that left foot forward. And so she's resetting that pitch. And you can really see Like she goes from like angling in towards Markus. She takes her 2 steps here. This third step where she's stepping quite a ways in front of her, you can then see her shoulders go from kind of up to a backward position. And she does a good job with that second foot that comes right up next to that foot that she's stepping in front of herself. Because at this point, you don't want to place that second foot any further back than her right foot, right? So the left foot cannot go further back than the right foot. Otherwise, you're just completely nullifying trying to change that pitch.
Mm-hmm. And then I want to highlight how when Tren is coming forward, Markus isn't impeding that at all. He's allowing the handhold to come towards him a little bit. So one of the things that Markus does incredibly well is manage the space between his body and his hand. He doesn't let himself get overextended. And so as he's going into this count 4 here with his left foot, aka the post count, he's very subtly doing a brace step. So his foot is striking out ahead of his body. So that way he has the choice to apply power into that leg to put on the brakes, as it were, if he needs to. And based on Tren's momentum, he's probably helping a lot with that braking power for her because of her large stride. And he's just calibrating afterwards to allow her to have a really comfortable anchor. And you can see how his right foot right here, he ends up doing a heel strike, and then he picks it up and brings it back. And yes, that's like a styling, but I think it was also in part so he could leave that foot out in front of him if he needed to, based on what Tren's doing. But that wasn't needed. He was able to bring it back. And he doesn't get overextended with his left arm at all. He's able to use that space to accommodate the anchor that she is wanting to dance and communicating through the connection that she wants to dance. All right. Because this is a pet peeve of mine. Oh, man. All right. So notice coming into this kind of fold in the push break, the handhold is not going down at all. It is staying at the same elevation.
Yeah.
Not at all. You don't, to rotate someone, you don't pull the hand down. I don't understand. But anyways, onward.
I think a lot of people do it because they're not adjusting their bodies correctly in relation to their arms and spacing.
Right.
Yeah. Because you can see that they're leaving their arms there, they're moving into their arms. So they're just rotating in. So they're keeping the connection, but they're just rotating into that arm that already has the connection.
Yeah. And if anything, the handhold is coming towards us in the camera a little bit. It's not changing height, but it's laterally shifting towards us in the camera to create space for them to have that rotation. And it's the same thing because they're rotating into an arm instead of out of an arm. It's also very common to do it with these handholds, in which case it would be open. But it's the same deal. You don't pull the arm down to make it.
So I like that we're starting the second dance in this open position, kind of mirroring each other. And it's nothing like, we're not doing like contact improv type things here.
I know.
Or not contact, but like where you mirror each other type improv. Like we're doing that, but it's not, it's like a consistent thing that they're both like, okay, we're doing this little shuffle.
And I love the way Tren is communicating here. It is so great. She's like, oh, I have an idea. Here's the thing I really want to do. And she starts doing it. And she gets really intentional with this pose right here and allows him to catch up to her. And there's like a pulse, a wait, and then they're on the same page. And I think that's something we talked about on one of our Patreon episodes for this month. There was a dance we were analyzing, or maybe it was our What Went Wrong workshop. But basically where a partner was contributing something and then another partner was like, okay, I'll contribute this too. And just like step all over the other partner, but then not give the partner enough time to catch on to the new game.
Yeah, that was what went wrong.
So I love the way Tren is communicating this opening sequence. And then because I'm a stickler and it kind of bothers me, 20s Charleston is danced with a forward break on the right foot and a back break on the left foot. Salsa is danced with a forward break on the left foot and a back break on the right foot. So they're doing Charleston on the salsa foot, and it hurts my brain a little. That is all.
Anyways,
I still love it though. It just that little part of my brain is like, eh. So see right here, they did the thing. The hand relaxed instead of going yank.
I also like that the first thing that they do is just like a sugar push.
Yes.
Like this is the second dance. A lot of times that's not what we're going to see. But I like that they chose to still go into like a basic recognizable thing first before they transformed that to something bringing the audience in.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, what I love here, so initially this start where they're not apart or they're not together, they're starting apart, they're connecting with each other, they're bringing each other in to get on the same, you know, like same brainwave, and then we just do something basic and then we turn it to bring the audience in and get on the same wavelength. I like that choice.
And then another addition about the choice of a sugar push is because they hadn't been touching, like, yes, they might be musically vibing together, but they aren't physically connected. So they need to calibrate physically to each other. And because they're going from open, a basic open pattern is an excellent way to do that. I've actually seen this kind of thing go wrong before in spotlights where they're not touching and then they suddenly do something not basic without having calibrated to each other at all. I don't care if you just danced another song, you need to recalibrate again. Yeah. That is all. But yeah, as Markus is driving Tren into this rotation right here, it's only coming down because she's gotten closer. It's not coming down to make her come closer. It's a relaxation after the fact. But the primary movement is down the slot and then towards the audience. It is moving much more from a bird's eye view than from our perspective.
And I also like that Tren kind of takes her own first step and then immediately gets right on to that same wavelength with what he's doing.
Yeah, because he's really adding a lot of energy and he's syncopating this. And she's noticing it out of her peripherals and probably through the handhold that there's more energy going on. So she just adds her own.
Because it looked to me like she was going to go for more of like a strut forward.
Yeah, I agree.
But she pretty like smoothly like changed it into matching what he was doing.
And that's another symptom of just having good technique with having your feet underneath you. Because if you're overstepping yourself, it's much harder to make those really quick timing changes. But if your feet are as baseline underneath you more often than not, you have more control to suddenly slow down or speed up. So good.
I really like the hard stop that she goes for.
Same.
Because we have like right here when we're doing the hip catches, we have like a soft stop from both of them, but it's like musically, it's something that's kind of like an extended note. And so it makes sense that they're kind of extending the movement a little bit, but it's not like a hard stop. But I like the difference between like this kind of like soft stop, and then we're going into this hard stop right here.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason that she does that is because she's mid-rotation when she wants to hit that note, hit that like really hard note in music. And so she really has to engage the legs in order to get that like really fast stop. So she plants with that left foot and then really engages the legs to stop herself. And you can tell that she is really engaging because there's not any like reverb or anything after she plants that second foot. Like she stops. The only thing that moves a little bit is that arm.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's kind of hard in the position that she has it in to like bring that to a dead stop by just like activating the muscles.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing to take into account timing wise, like if you want a really hard stop on something, you need to make sure you're there a little early so you can cushion into it ever so slightly.
Mm-hmm.
So her foot is out ahead of her. She's engaging her legs like Alicia was talking about. And she gets just this little movement just right here to absorb into it. It is so subtle, but it's happening like right in the moment that it needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's not late. So in order to stop on a dime, you have to kind of get there a hair second early to account for the fact that your body's going to cushion into that a little bit and probably reverberate backwards depending on how hard you're stopping. Because there's a difference between like a stop that doesn't reverberate and a stop that kind of bounces back a little bit. And this is the one where she's trying not to reverberate. She's just trying to go bam, stop.
Yep.
And then I just want to highlight what Markus is doing. He's doing an amazing job of doing most of the moving right here. So it's not all on Tren. He's really in his knees. He's shifting back and forth. He's going with the hand gesture. That's one of those miming things that I'm okay with. That's
good.
And
it's like matching, doing it together.
Yeah. And then this scroll right here, where he really gets far enough away from her, is amazing. And he's basically doing a grapevine. He's hooking behind with his right foot, sidestepping, and then crossing in front. And as he is grounding into that front foot, that's actually what's leading the rock and go to bring Tren forward. And then while Tren's doing a super hard stop, and it has that, it's much more obvious because of how much she was traveling beforehand, Markus is doing an and one really quick with his feet out for the same emphasis. So he's putting his right foot or left foot, right foot.
Yep.
Yeah, doing a really quick and one out is like a really simple emphasis thing to learn. And if you don't already have it in your back pocket, I highly recommend adding it because it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of those things that you have to really be able to control your grounding. Because you need to not be grounded for a hot second to be able to do that like out of the foot.
Because you kind of have to hop into it a little bit. You need to get yourself some air time to get your feet out. And then you're a split weight. And then if you want to land on your heels, that's even more challenging. Then I love this choice right here for Markus to wrap himself up.
Yeah.
And then he does it again because she just hit something so hard and so excellently. it's a call and response. It makes
Mm-hmm.
sense because the music is coming back around for him to do a similar thing.
Yep.
And for him, because he's not coming out of as much rotation as she was, to emphasize it, he's doing a kickball change. So a kick, hop, and out. And then the hands on it. It's just excellent. It's just excellent choices all around.
Thank you for demoing the arms, Cassie.
You're welcome. Because I like my top. I want to show it off.
One quick other thing that I want to say about that, not on Marcus's behalf, but for what Tren does. I love that she is paying attention to what he's doing, and then once she's like set with what he's doing, she brings her attention to the audience because his back is to her. But she knows what he's doing, right? She's close enough to him so she can like kind of tell what he's doing without necessarily having to like be glued onto, eyes glued onto him. And she can feel him start moving forward.
It's just so amazing how, like, this is how comfortable they are with each other, how much they've danced with each other. He knows how close he can get without being too much in her space and without stepping on her. But she's gonna be comfortable because every one of us has our own kind of bubble in front of us. We're like, if a person gets into that bubble, it's like, you're too close, go away. And the other thing is, because this is, if I were to see a different couple doing this, a different leader doing this, I could imagine them styling this and suddenly moving their body further back into their follow space. And as a follow, you would be like, But he manages to do these chugs and this shoulder motion and the rolling without actually moving his torso back into her bubble. And it's a really nice detail.
Yeah. And then last thing I want to say about this is that Tren doesn't look at the audience for too long. One thing that I've been seeing recently is where we realize we need to bring the audience in, but we look at the audience for way too long.
I know. And it's just like way too aggressive instead of being like acknowledging you're there and being like, hey, it's like, I call them serial killer eyes. They're like, do you see me? Yes, I see you. Jeez, please don't perceive me back.
Yeah. So just wanted to mention that the best way to go about engaging the audience is to have like a glance and then moving it back to your partner. Prolong things, unless you are in tandem moving towards the audience with your partner, that's fine if you want to do that, if you feel solid with what they're doing. But like when you're moving in a different direction, it's just very unnatural to be like facing this way and be like,
oh, it's so creepy. Oh, it's so creepy. I hate it. I hate it so much. Yeah, it needs to be natural. Like, would you already be looking in that direction? So just like look up and be like, hey. Or if there's someone you're wanting to engage like one-on-one, be really clear, like, you're the person I'm talking to right now.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that's good for when you're physically closer. So it's more obvious as opposed to when you're like 20 paces off and you're making eyes with the person by the water cooler. It's just
staring them down. Yeah. Making eye contact with the audience should be no longer than a second or two, generally. If you are facing a different direction.
Yeah. Unless for some reason, because I know I can imagine Todd doing this, it's an actual serial killer vibes song. In which case, go for it. If you want serial killer eyes, if it's intentional, fine.
Yeah. I'm assuming you should stop doing that because that was their like,
oh yeah.
So coming into this, I love how much time they take to reconnect. Right. So we have Marcus kind of rolling himself out scrolling, and Tren kind of stays where she's at, and they get to a point where they're a little too far from each other to like comfortably connect right back up. And so they kind of add a little groove in while they're taking a second to reconnect.
A groove and an anchor.
Yeah.
It's a groove with function.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. We're just kind of resetting things.
It's like, oh man, the number of times like I've seen people come out of the shenanigans, a different kind of ambiguity tornado, if you will. There's like they're trying to connect in such a way, like without anchoring, and just go. And that's one thing. If it's a slower song, it's one of those extended anchors where it's more about the settle and less about the triple. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about chaos, chaos, chaos. Go.
Yep. Also, I'd like to point out that Andrew said Granker.
Oh, jeez. Did I say that? Or is that a joke about? Okay, cool.
You said a combination of things. And
okay, cool. I like it. A Granker. Yes. Yes. Okay. So the way this is happening is they're both intending forward first in order to have somewhere to go on the away half of an anchor.
Mm-hmm.
This is very important. It's basically like double resistance, but without the double part because they weren't touching for the first part.
Basically.
And then I love this really simple choice that Markus makes to change the direction of the slot to travel it back away from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
That was really nice, really subtle, and it's getting them back to being more center stage.
Yeah, because they spent a lot of time right up in the audience's face.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about time that they kind of move back again, give some space. One of my pet peeves
is going into the corner and staying there.
The whole song.
We're the cool people. This is contact improv with the audience. Who will kick who? No one knows.
It's just like if you watch Champions, like what you see from them, yes, they use the whole floor. They, go back towards their peers sitting behind them. They'll come up towards the audience, but they don't stay there the whole time. So it's really beneficial for you to learn how to travel things because a lot of the times what I see is leads having this really cool like traveling pattern and they get into a corner and then they don't have another pattern to get them back the other direction. And so they're like trying to like gradually move their way back. And they try, but like you need to be able to transition a lot of things into a travel if need be.
And like it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be the telemark of Michael Kilboss's dreams. It doesn't. It can. Doesn't have to. I am on point tonight. I am like 3 weeks of no sleep because of a new medication. Yay. So the humor is because I've hit that point of hyper where I don't even know I'm tired anymore. I'm just here.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. Yeah. But like at the very beginning of the first song, we saw Markus lead that traveling sugar push. It can be a traveling sugar push. It could be an extended left side pass.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an ambiguity tornado. I need it on a shirt. The
other side of that is that a lot of times follows will be trying to do so many things that it's hard to get in something that will travel things back.
Yes. Oh, okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. If this has only been my experience, please let me know. But I feel like for years, we were all like, don't hijack. this is how you dance without hijacking. Like that was a top of mind topic for a long time. And then I don't know what happened over the course of the pandemic, but I feel like that goal just fucking up and disappeared. Excuse my French. Just bye.
I have seen that a lot more recently.
Okay, cool.
Where follows are like hijacking, unapologetically.
I know. Like, and it's not just that they're doing it selectively. It's like almost the entire dance.
Yeah.
It's bonkers. I'm just, but you need to follow.
You're right.
Thou art a follow. I dub thee. Follow.
Yep. Like I understand wanting to play around with things and wanting to, experiment a little bit, and you gotta be choosy with things. Otherwise it just becomes you dancing with your hands touching.
I know, it's like, oh look, we're touching.
E.T.
Oh yeah. So Erin asks, what if them being choosy is choosing all of the time? That's when you come to us and drown your sorrows. Because, and I think, I forget when we talked about this, but it's basically you get to decide, am I going to try to fight for this? Or am I just going to do my best to accommodate it?
Yeah.
And fighting can feel really sad, but it can also be dangerous without the skill to support it, to try to assert what you want to have happen in the dance. To do that safely and clearly is a very particular skill set. But like emotionally, it's a bummer. It's a partner dance. It's a partner dance.
It makes me it makes me think of when we were at the airport and Phoenix was talking with us, telling us what
that
Brandy
was a joyful day.
It was like, I guess Brandy told him, yeah, sometimes life just sucks. Because I think the context was him asking her what he should do with A, B, C. She was like, sometimes life just sucks.
Yeah. So if I'm thinking from like a leader perspective, if I have a follow who very clearly has an agenda and is kind of usurping the situation, if I'm just social dancing with them, I will accommodate them to the extent where I'm just going through the motions. But competitively, it's a different animal. Because you want to make it look like their agenda is your agenda. So that way it becomes more partnered.
Yep.
So it's this very sneaky, making it look like you led everything. And everything that is happening is because you deem it so, as opposed to being run over. And that's a very unique skill set on behalf of a leader. A follow, though, like in theory, the leader should have some semblance of an agenda.
I would hope so.
That would be nice.
Otherwise, we're just doing sugar pushes for 3 minutes.
Granted, I would take that over ambiguity tornado any day.
I would agree. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. And one thing that I've also been seeing, because I've been seeing a lot of follows wanting to have their own dance with the audience and not their partner.
Serial killer
one thing that I've been seeing is leads not quite knowing how to get out of said situation that they are in. Like, there's a difference between like working what the follow is doing and trying to ease them out and just like pulling them out and trying to be like, no, I think you're done now.
Right. Oh my God. Oh my God. So like leading, so much of leading is using the connection to communicate information, not necessarily leveraged power.
Mhm.
Like yes, there is an aspect of me helping a follow move.
Yeah.
Erin says, I feel
Didn't mean
like we've
to.
stumbled into the soapbox episode and I am here for it. I'm like, yes, we apparently are here for it too. But isn't that every episode? Maybe we're gone late enough. I'll just move to our faces so we can rant about this. So using the connection to at the right time give a follow movement information. And that depends on where the follow is over their feet.
Yep.
Whether they are centered over a foot or not, whether or not they're moving, what the relationship between their foot strike, their weight transfer, their momentum, and direction. Those four things. Depending on that context, determines when I can add a piece of information, like request a change. So like, for example, body mechanics wise, if you're stepping forward on your right foot as a human being, it is going to be easier to turn to your right than it is to turn to your left. If you're stepping forward on your left foot, it's going to be easier to turn to your left than to turn to your right. And if you're going backwards, it's backwards. If you're stepping backward on your right foot, it's easier to turn to the left. If you're stepping backward on your left foot, it's easier to turn to the right.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of information where I'm like, hey, my follow is stepping forward on their right foot. If I catch them soon enough, I can ask them to rotate to the right on that foot.
Yeah.
Cool. If I'm too late, they're going to be mad at me in their head.
Yeah.
If I want them to turn to the left on their right foot, I have to go through quite an inordinate amount of shenanigans. That's Fuete territory to make that happen.
Yes.
Yeah, because like, yes, there is an element depending on how much power you're applying to a situation where I am physically applying power to the system. I'm helping my follow move. But I feel like more importantly, it's providing the information at the right time so the follow can actually use it effectively. Because if a leader wants me to turn to the left on my left foot on count 2, essentially, if I don't get that information until after count 2, it's already too late. My inertia has taken me across my left foot in a certain way. I no longer I'm not ready to turn. It's too late, sir. You are too late. And so when we come back to anchors and coming out of these shenanigans and then reconnecting, the whole point of an anchor is to physically get on the same page so the leader knows that context of the follows. So I can be like, oh, okay, now is when I need to ask you to come forward because you are ready to come forward. If I do that too late or too early, the follow has to compensate.
Right.
And
yeah. And on that note, I want to talk about, because you were talking about like using movements and whatnot. I want to talk about when somebody is split weight. It is almost always going to look like yanking if you are trying to get somebody out of a split weight position. Mostly the best option is going to be to wait until they are no longer split weight. Typically, I mean, and that doesn't mean that they're necessarily moving their feet at all, but typically when you end in a split weight position, you're right up above your feet, but generally you don't stay right there. Generally the hips will sink one way or the other, and that's when you can start using that. If they are just directly up over their feet, split weight, it will look like yanking most of the time.
Yep.
There are certain things that you can do to avoid that, but like 9 times out of 10, it's going to look like you're yanking them no matter how you try and get them out of that. So you got to at least wait. And on that same note, if you are the person that is ending in a split weight position, don't just stay there. Like you can stay there for a second or two, that's fine, but then kind of give something a little bit, shift the hips to one side or the other ever so slightly so that you can get back connected.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't look like you're being yanked, and you don't get yanked. There's a positive.
Yep.
So,
yeah, because basically, in order for one foot to get off the ground, there needs to be little enough body weight on it that it can be picked up.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to ask everyone to stand like feet a little bit wider than hip width distance, completely split weight, and ask you to pick up your right foot, you literally could not.
Yep.
You would have to shift your weight mm-hmm. to the standing foot, at least somewhat, in order to pick up that foot.
Because if you were to try and pick up said foot when you are equally weighted, you are tipping in the direction that you're.
Bye. And understanding what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to do a really quick up and down, like a not full commitment of weight to the standing leg, that's one thing. If you're trying to have like complete perfect balance and be able to do something with the free foot, you need to be completely centered and grounded over the standing foot.
Yep.
And this is what I'm talking about with as a leader. So as a leader, it's actually talking to you about this last night, Erin. That's probably why it's a friend of mine. But there are kind of two things in your toolbox as a leader that can help you calibrate to your follow, depending on your level of ability to feel and use connection and the follow's level of ability to feel and use connection. Because if that element isn't as advanced as it could be, as a leader, you can depend on your eyesight. It's really easy to tell if a follow's body is over top of a foot or not, and which direction it's going, and whether or not they're actually letting their feet get underneath them or letting their body get over top of a foot. And one of the reasons I think why I'm such a popular leader is I constantly calibrate to my follow and I let them get over their feet. And if it's a follow who struggles to get over their feet, that's a technique they haven't built yet. I have things that I can do to encourage them to get over their feet. And that's why they feel like $1 million in my arms. Because they're like, oh, I didn't fall over.
Yeah.
I was stable. I knew exactly what was going on.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was a soapbox.
I know. See, simple is brilliant because it means so much to us.
Yes, but really, like, if you want to dance a simple dance, that's okay. You don't have to emphasize everything. Go with what the music is telling you. Honestly, that's one thing that I've really been noticing lately is that I'll be watching a couple dancing and I'm listening to the music and I'm like, I don't see how what they're doing and the music is related. Like, ideally, when I'm listening and watching, I like to be able to see the music. And I haven't been seeing that much lately.
Yeah. And not just on the larger kind of phrasing level, but on the basic rhythm of the song level.
Yep.
So that groove we were seeing between Markus and Tren, where they were pulsing their rhythm in sync with the music and therefore each other, that's what's missing from so many dances these days. You can't just show up for the sudden stop that Tren pulls out and is amazing. You need to be there for the basic fundamental rhythm, the driving rhythm of the song. And with your partner. And that's what helps facilitate good connection, because if you're both timed to the music correctly, you'll be timed to each other correctly.
Yeah. And A lot of times I see follows making choices that don't really make sense based on what's happening in the music, and it really throws their leads off. And then there has to be a whole recovery and change of plans. And we do talk about, starting with A, ending with B, but like typically that should be based on what the follow is taking from like your leading, not so much just the follow completely ignoring whatever is going on and just doing their own thing. And then you're like, oh, just kidding, have to do something totally different. It's more like A to B is a smooth transition, where what I'm talking about is like we're starting with A and then you're like, oh, never mind. Just kidding. I'm not going to do that. Doing something totally different now.
I know.
Not a smooth transition.
That's
And
like
there's
asking,
usually
I
a
would
little bit
like
of
a French vanilla swirl frozen yogurt, please. And you bring me back pistachio. I'm like, what? It's not even remotely what I asked for. And it's not just that you're like, here, you're like shoving it in my face. I'm like, pistachio.
not what I wanted.
I have nothing against pistachio. That was just the first thing that was enough different from chocolate and vanilla that come to my mind.
Yep. Yeah. So point being, try and keep things, relatively related to the music and to what you're already doing. Like, you don't always have to be doing something super complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And to that note, to match what the music is doing, that doesn't mean you have to do something that looks fancy. You can just adjust the timing of your steps a little bit. You can adjust the like how dramatically you take a step. Like, there's so many little things that you can do that can match with the music that aren't just like completely veering off the path of where you were going.
I mean, as a tool, it's a great way if your partner is paying zero attention to you to just do something bonkers out of left field to see if that will get them back on the same page as you and then get back to partnering.
Yeah.
But like, it should not be your MO.
Exactly.
Although ironically, I feel like the exhibition for Jordan and Tot with Jordan as Buster Keaton and Tot as wow, Charlie Chaplin. I feel like that is exactly what that would be. They would both have their own, it would just be chaos, but on purpose.
Yeah.
Hence why it's choreography.
Yeah. So anyways, I feel like we went down a very deep rabbit hole of things.
We did. We'll see how embarrassed I am to edit this tomorrow. Kind of hope we have the same vibe with Sarah in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Just the three of us just ranting into the
Speaking
void.
of which,
our
next episode is going to be Sarah.
Yeah. It'll be happening live on Wednesday, August 31st at 7 p.m. Pacific. You can find details on our Facebook page. But as usual, the Sunday following, the recording will be up on YouTube. But yeah, highly recommend joining live if there are any questions you've been burning to ask Sarah.
Yeah. It should be a fun episode. She's very excited.
I'm so excited. Love Sarah.
Yes. All right. That said, I think that's all that we have to talk about tonight.
Yes.
Or at least, let me rephrase that. That's all we should talk about tonight.
We could just keep going, but we're going to stop. We're going to stop at pistachio frozen yogurt because I think that's a stopping point. Thank you all for joining us.
Hopefully it was entertaining. See you later.
Because if you know how to ground into a slippery floor, if you use that same technique on a grippy floor, you become a human ent. You're just rooted into the ground. I'm so excited they're going to be at Bridgetown. I'm totally going to like worm my way into a conversation and be like, you should do Chaplin and Buster Keaton. I need that exhibition from YouTube really badly. Just gonna pitch it. Maybe I'll have a PowerPoint presentation. I'll be like, this is why you should do this. I need this in my life. Okay, thanks, bye. I've been listening to the Buffy the Vampire Slayer Once More with Feeling soundtrack, and that's one of the lyrics. So as I said it, I heard Buffy singing it in my head. It was great. Oh God, what was I talking about?
What were you talking about?